I'm disappointed with Summon Reaper. Don't worry, this is not to bemoan the recent trend of balance changes. It is intended as specific feedback on how a skill that, despite receiving numerous buffs since its inception, has still managed to miss its mark. Hello and hey, to mess around with Path of Exile, this time talking about my favorite skill, Summon Reaper. Before I dig in, I should point out that I am aware that many much older skills are worse off. Some are clunkier, some are just quite weak. I'm not implying this is the most pressing skill gem to address on any level. It again is pointed feedback about my favorite skill. Let's run it from the beginning. Summon Reaper was introduced in 3.15 Expedition League to substantial hype. The graphical design of the skill is fantastic. She looks menacingly imposing, and people want to play her. Though, after we got our hands on her, and then still, even after the rare multiple mid-league buffs, people shied away pretty quickly. If not for those and Previ's bleed interpretation, it is likely the skill would have been considered amongst the worst to be released in recent memory. Speaking of, quick aside, why is everyone so allergic to giving credit? I've watched just about every piece of Summon Reaper content on the platform, and so much of it is just Previ's current iteration with minimal or sometimes no changes without giving any credit whatsoever. I've played this skill almost as much as anyone in the world, likely the most to have never played a bleed-focused variant, and even I am shouting Previ out. Give people their flowers. A different topic for a different day, but come on, man. Back into it, the bleed. That's the rub. Bleed feels like the only way to play the skill, which makes sense. It has a humongous more multiplier right there on the gem, and it's far from the only skill to more or less require it to be built a certain way. The fact that it has a relevant build at all is more than a number of skills can say, but stick with me. This is the minion skill you should want to succeed if you find yourself engaging in archetype tribalism. The active being one that you must aim, with a considerable default cooldown of 4 seconds. If you miss, there are no easy corrections, and you are better off playing any other minion build for the next few seconds. Which is great. Having so much of the minion's damage being tied up in the player's ability to hit the skill gives it a unique hybrid playstyle that, while clunky for some, is something I very much enjoy. I will continue to praise what's there by conceding that the bleed build requiring certain items bucks the trends of minions overperforming at levels of lower investment, while also acknowledging that by not being built around hit-based, it makes the minion feel less samey, even though that all that's changed are some support gems and a few Ghastly Eye Jewel mods. I'll be clear, I don't want the bleed to go away or be nerfed in any capacity. I just think the hit-based variant should be brought up some, not to the heights of bleed, at least not with less investment, but here are some thoughts on how we might do that. Firstly, getting this out of the way, the caveman approach of just giving the skill gem more base damage while scaling back the bleed multiplier inversely, leaving bleed damage exactly where it stands now. However, the lack of gem changes over the past year, despite the community begging for them, denotes that GGG wants to wait until PoE 2 to make any changes like that, since they'll likely have to do that anyway, with characters seeming to have access to more total sockets. But changing the base numbers doesn't address how the skill feels, unless it flips from too weak to too strong, or vice versa, so I can see why they've taken that approach. I do wish we got a bit more adjustments in the leagues where there was basically none in the lead up to this point, because it'll be quite the amount of time with mostly unchanged gem if we look back to when it started and then all the way forward to when PoE actually comes out. But I'm starting to get a little off topic. So I do agree with the inferred take that it will take more than just damage numbers to address a lot of different skills, and that's exactly the case for Summon Reaper. Some numbers that we can take a look at, however, are for the consume skill she uses. The cooldown of 25 seconds is fine, but the duration of the buff it grants, being a mere 6 seconds, is mismatched. The main way of getting her buff, which you're probably shouting at me now, is for her to be under 75 HP and eat one of your minions, and that's where the 6-second timer comes from, the cooldown on that healing ability, which I'm absolutely fine with that being a way you can get the buff, but I don't like that that's the default. It makes more sense in my head if she's getting stronger than she already is, not constantly recovering and somehow being stronger because of it. The, don't build as much defense that you can get the buff more often is a weird space, and I think we can change it. And I think we can change it by doubling the duration of the 25-second cooldown. Like, if you're feeding her minions when she is at or near full strength, she gets the buff half the time at base, and it wouldn't be crazy to have it up near 100% of the time with investment into skill effect duration / minion duration, and having invested into minion defenses. Especially with the damage portion of the buff being removed a few leagues ago, it's more of a utility thing. The attack speed and area of effect will help her clear, which is the weakest part of her kit, and just think if she has access to it at nearly all times, at the cost of other minions, you really wouldn't have to balance it any further. Another couple options for the consume skill could be to either make it a hierarchy that always eats a certain order if available, like AG first, then zombies, and so on, or to get different values depending on what she consumes, either buff strength, duration, or both. Something temporary like Phantasms provides less, while something like a Spectre provides a little more. I feel less strongly about these suggestions, but a big weakness of the Reaper is that it doesn't gain the benefits of support minions or animate Garden very easily, and I do feel the loss of that source of power while having to press more buttons is strange, and less damage of other minions, especially with a value that gets more penalizing as you level the gem. I think this was important to have upon release, that she wasn't just added into every existing minion build. And for PoE 2, as I said before, with likely more sockets available, things like this might become more common across the game, and that fits, I have no problems with that. But here and now, PoE 1, in this weird space where she's your main link with additional minions and or maybe some support specters, and she's making it extremely tedious by constantly consuming the specters for just a short little buff. Or she's either actively punishing your main link if you try to use her as additional firepower on the side, both by providing less damage and actively removing them. She could be used alone and doesn't get the benefits such as Feeding Frenzy, Maim, support minion buffs, nor her consume buff. Or you try to balance the lone playstyle with some skeletons and phantasms, getting the buffs, but having the damage fall short of if you just played zombies, not even the current meta stuff like SRS. Heck, even the bleed variant is completely reliant on the target moving or ensnaring arrow. There's just a lot of extra steps to her, and you still get lesser results, and I'd like to see that change. If you'd like to discuss anything I've proposed or have an even better suggestion, meet me in the comments section. I'd be happy to talk about it. But anything else I might say would either circle back around on itself or just come off as complaining. So as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Be safe, guys.